Welcome to the Think Yourself Healthy podcast, where you meet the intersection of mind, body, and soul. I'm your host, Heather Duranja, founder of Nutrition Vixen, registered dietitian, nutritionist, personal trainer, and cognitive behavioral specialist. I'm a mother, author, self-improvement junkie, and recovering perfectionist turned professional half-asser. Each week, I'll be bringing on a guest or a topic that will help you go from surviving to thriving. Are you with me? All right, here we go with today's episode. So on today's show, I have Laura Ligos. Laura Ligos is a registered dietitian with a passion for real food. Laura loves teaching her clients and followers how to eat healthy food that make them feel great and leaves them satisfied. Find more from her at the sassydietitian.com or at Sassy Dietitian on IG. So Miss Laura, this is the first opportunity that you and I have actually had a face-to-face conversation via any kind of video or anything, but I have been following you for a long time and absolutely love what you're doing, love your social media presence. I think one of my favorite things about you is that you are super transparent and you speak what is on your mind and you call bullshit on all of the stuff out there in the health and wellness space. And I totally respect and appreciate you for that.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. And I'm excited to be on your show, Heather.
So tell me, how did you come up with the name Sassy Dietitian?
Oh God, that's one everyone wants to know. Well, once you get to know me, it kind of shines through. You don't really have any questions after that. But when I was a clinical dietitian in the hospital, I kind of started getting a reputation because I didn't take everything at face value. I didn't take old standards that the dietitians were preaching to face value. And I also didn't let the doctors walk all over me. So that's where that started. And then I got really close with a lot of the nurses and just started really giving it back to them because I was sick and tired of seeing people, diabetics still with blood sugars in the 300s. And I was like, we can do better than this. Mm-hmm. And so I decided that was not the population for me. It was not where I was going to have the greatest impact. So at the time I had just started CrossFit and I told a lot of my friends that I wanted to start seeing people on the side and doing talks. And I told them all I needed a name. I was like, I need something so that I can have a website and a presence so that people, if they Google me, they know who I am. And I was engaged at the time. So I was like, I don't want to use my maiden name because I'm going to be changing my name, all this stuff. So I polled a bunch of my friends and asked them for 3 characteristics that they thought of as soon as, like, if someone were to say, what do you think of Laura? I guess it's too good to be true. So, a lot of them were like rebel and rogue and things that were like a little off color than a normal dietitian, I guess. And so that's where it kind of came from.
So brave
and I was like,
of you.
Fit. Yeah, it's just my personality has always been that way. I've always kind of thought outside the box. I've always been okay to speak my mind. But Sassy fit because I feel like I also do it in a very loving and caring manner, with a lot of energy and a lot of zeal. So it just like it clicked and I was like, that's it. And back then Instagram wasn't really even a big thing. I had no idea what I was doing. And most people who had a name or a platform were all, paleo this or I don't even know what else was big back then, vegan that. And so to me, I was like, I don't want to pigeonhole myself because that's never been my vibe. So Sassy was just like, yeah, that's my personality. That's who I am. I'm not going to sugarcoat it for people. Yeah. And that way when people, like, when they get a one-on-one with me, they know that I'm not going to baby them. I'm not going to sit there and just say, here's a to-do list and just get it done. Instead, I'm going to be in their face in the most loving way possible so that they can be successful.
I love it. I love it. So myself, when I was driving in my car thinking about, I was in undergrad and I was like, who am I going to be? Who am I going to be? And it popped in my head. It was Nutrition Vixen. And I was like, that's it. And I remember going home that night and securing my web domain. And then I didn't do anything with it for like years, but I knew that that's who I was, the identity that I was going to assume in this space. And there's this misconception. A lot of people think that the vixen is like that sex kitten, that sexy, temptress type person.
Yeah.
And there's truth to it in the sense that I want nutrition to be sexy, but the part that I identified the most with vixen was really the shrewd tongue. Like you, I am like, I am not going to baby people. I am not going to sugarcoat shit because it doesn't work. We already victimize ourselves enough as it is, especially in the clinical world. Once we get these diagnoses, we just assume, oh, I've got a diagnosis. This is my life now. I'm going to attach myself to this, and I'm not really going to make any change because I'm just going to assume that I'm going to feel like shit for the rest of my life. Okay, cool. No, it does not work for me. So for myself, I got diagnosed with a kidney disease, a chronic kidney disease, autoimmune issue at 18. And at that time, I was not a full-time student, and I got kicked off of my parents' health insurance. And then I couldn't get health insurance because I had a pre-existing condition. And so after the birth of my first daughter, during the birth of my first daughter, I had to go through clinics, and I got really, really sick. And after she was born, I went to my nephrologist, and my nephrologist said to me, "You're looking at dialysis or transplant in the next 5 years." And I looked at him and I said, "Oh, no, I'm not. I don't have health insurance, and I just had this kid. Like, how am I supposed to do that?"
Yeah.
And so for me, that was the day that I chose I wasn't going to take that diagnosis and assume that as my identity. And so I had to be honest with myself. Okay, you have responsibility here. You need to do something. You're going to have to be your own advocate. And that's where my passion for research truly began. And I'm going to date myself because back in my day, we didn't have Google. Like, I had to go to the library and research and like check books out. And and long story short, I couldn't even get a library card at that time. I had to use my infant's social security card to get a library book, because when I was a teenager, I didn't bring back books. And anyway, I was really super irresponsible. And
it happens. We all have those.
Right? Those damn babysitter club books. If I only knew where they were now.
Oh my God. Those are so old. I forgot about those.
I know, right? So yeah. So, I don't have a lot of sympathy in a sense for individuals, because we do have choices. We do have responsibility when it comes to our own health and wellness. And I'm a big advocate for, we can't trust the system. We have to become our own experts. And as a part of becoming our own experts, we have to seek the advice of other experts out there to help guide us along the way. So tell me, what brought you down this pathway of becoming a dietitian?
Well, your story is quite compelling, honestly. And I applaud you for being able to go through that, because I think a lot of people don't realize that they have a lot of power within themselves to seek what they need. And that's exactly where experts and coaches come in when you're not the expert or coach yourself. Mine is not nearly as complex. I had a few avenues to get me here. My mom had food allergies growing up, so I was always curious as to why and what to do about it. So that's always been something super interesting to me. My husband is lactose intolerant. So there's a lot of people in my life who have some type of allergy or intolerance. And for me, I want to feed them, I want to nourish them, and I want them to no longer have fear around food. Because to me, food is so healing and so joyful. And I hate when people feel like, I have a friend who has allergies, and I've seen her in certain situations where she's closed off and reserved and she's nervous. And I hate that she feels that way. Like, that's one thing that I always try to fix, because I'm like, I want you to have just as much fun as I'm having with food.
Yes.
So there was that whole avenue. And then I was a competitive swimmer, and I'm all of 5'4" in height. I know I'm much larger in personality.
Oh my God. I would have never guessed that.
Yeah, most people don't. And even in the pool, I looked taller than I was. And I know.
I am like, in my eyes, you were 5'11", like easily 5'11".
Yeah, no, it's funny. And I honestly think I'm taller than I am. And then I get in pictures and I'm like, oh, okay, I'm the shorty.
Oh my God, that's
But
awesome.
as a swimmer, I was pretty tiny. I have huge lats. That's what I'm known for. But my body is not all that large. I was always the tiniest one getting out of the pool, except my one friend. She was way tinier. The two of us always were like, we just swim bigger than we actually are.
That's
So I
awesome.
wanted to figure out ways to actually fuel myself. And what's funny is that I don't really think I had a huge grasp on sports nutrition as well as real food nutrition throughout college, which is when I was
Mhm.
learning all this stuff. It was almost too much to learn and to apply. And I wish I could almost go back and apply some of it, because I probably am more fit now than I was when I hung up my swimsuit 10 years ago.
Wow.
But that was a passion of mine to figure out, I've always been on team we eat food. Like, I've never been someone to not fuel my fitness. Like, if I'm
Mhm.
hungry, I eat. If I've exercised more than normal, I'll eat multiple meals. And so that to me was always kind of a driver of figuring out how to improve my performance through nutrition, because at the end of the day, there's only so much training you can do in a day.
Right.
And there's only so much you can do about your genetics. Like, there's nothing I
Mhm.
can do. I can't grow a foot taller. And so that was something that was just super interesting to me. So I've kind of been able to blend that all together now with my practice to be able to help people who are more in the fitness space, not necessarily the elite space, and who also suffer with gut health,
Mhm.
food allergies, intolerances, or even food fears.
Yeah. Well, I think that when people suffer from food allergies and food intolerance, there is so much built-in fear around choices that it's actually contributing to the problem. When
Right.
we
Like chicken or
elicit,
the egg.
yeah, when we elicit that fear around, oh my God, if I eat this egg, is it going to cause me to start having cramping in my stomach, or am I going to break out in a rash, or am I going to want to have diarrhea? We're eliciting that stress response in the body, and it's shutting down our body's ability to rest and digest appropriately. And so naturally, as we're starting to consume these things and there's so much fear associated with it, our body isn't going to be able to metabolize it appropriately. And we are going to have these kind of outcomes that are unfortunate. And so we stay in this vicious cycle. So I know for myself, and it sounds like you as well, part of the piece and the role that we want to play is to really help educate people so that we can reduce the fear around consuming food and when we're making those choices for ourselves, right?
Totally. And it's also like not even just, I mean, educating is part of it, right? And also
Mhm.
empowering them. Like,
Yes.
when I met my husband, he would just take lactate pills and he would suffer consequences. Like,
Mhm.
he literally looks at butter and he has symptoms. And
Oh,
now he doesn't. It's a completely different story because now he's taking control over it. And when we go to a restaurant, he knows exactly what to ask for. And he doesn't just sit there and say, oh, they messed it up, I'm just going to eat it anyway to please their,
hmm.
like, he, and we got lobster rolls because we were in Maine, and he had
Of
to go back, I
course.
think, 3 times for them to get it right. And when I first met him 13 years ago, he would have never done that. He would have just been like, okay, well, I'll suffer the consequences. And
Hmm.
so I finally, like, educating him on why it was happening was important, but then empowering him, because, like, I tell a lot of people who are trying to help those in their life that they love, I'm like, you can't be the one who's ordering for them or telling the waiter for them, because then it makes them more embarrassed, more anxious, and more nervous about it. I'm like, so you
Absolutely.
have to encourage them to be the ones to do it, because they have to want it enough, and they also have to feel that they have control over it,
Hmm.
and also realizing that some restaurants, wherever you are, friends' houses, like, they may not be able to provide that for you, but the worst thing that happens is they say no.
Right.
Instead of feeling like you're being a burden, you're just basically letting them know, hey, I cannot have this. And if you can't do it, that's okay. I just need to know and I can eat later.
Hmm.
And that, I think, to a lot of people is important too, is like, you're allowed to speak up, not just at
Yeah.
your doctor's office, but also at the restaurant and at your friend's house. Like,
Right.
speaking up for your health is the biggest thing that you can do, because no one knows how you feel except
Yes.
you.
Right. I'm so glad that you brought this concept up, because this is something I have a lot of conversation around with my clients, because majority of the clientele that I work with, they have autoimmune issues. typically there are a lot of food intolerances or food allergies that are associated with managing and, symptoms of their autoimmune situation. And so they have so much fear around going to social events, going to restaurants, going to friends' birthday parties, going to retirement parties, because they're going to be faced with all of these food items, and they don't feel empowered enough to understand that they can verbalize their needs and their needs can be met so that they can still enjoy themselves without having to sacrifice their health in the process. And I know for me personally, this was something I had to experience. Most likely as a small child, I had severe food allergies that were associated with wheat, casein, whey, and chickpea. But it wasn't until I was a much older adult for it to get diagnosed. And so, once I discovered that these were the specific things that I could not eat, it made it really easy for me going out and ordering or going to a friend's house or contacting a friend prior to coming over and saying, hey, here's my circumstances, but there was a lot of embarrassment and shame initially around being able to speak up for myself. And so there was this phase where I knew what my problems were, but I didn't have the confidence to be able to speak up and say, I don't want to feel like crap. I don't want to break out in hives head to toe. I don't want to have a belly that's bloated 9 months and takes me 5 weeks to resolve. I just sacrificed myself and because of, that fear of being judged, of not being the normal person. So what is your approach when talking to people who aren't empowered yet to make the decisions for themselves? How do you encourage them to become empowered?
I think the first thing is recognizing the outcome. I think a lot of people detach themselves from the outcome. They know, like they knew exactly the list of foods that cause harm. Then they think about the harm, but the in between they've just never planned for. And it's like anything else in life. Mm-hmm. Like you don't say, I'm going to London and I'm coming home from London and just wing it. I mean, I'm sure there are people who do, those people who are just amazing travelers and figure it out. But most people, they actually have a pretty good plan of what they want to go see and hit. So that goes, I try to take situations like that and say, okay, now apply that to your nutrition. Nutrition is no different than something like that. So if you're going to go out to eat, look at the outcome. Do you want to be sick for 5 weeks, or do you want to feel really good? And I mean, most people say they want to feel really good, I would hope.
Right.
And so we say, okay, how do we get you to that outcome? And they normally will say, okay, I need to eat at home. I can't eat anything out. And there's the pity party. And I say, or the alternative is speaking up. And a lot of people say that they're worried that their friends are going to feel burdened by them, or, not invite them places, or the waitress is going to spit in their food. Like there's so many different things that people, like we have these expectations that things are going to be like so amazing or so terrible, when really most situations, most outcomes are just kind of okay. They're like not that great and also not that bad. Our mind plays tricks on us. So you have to practice. You have to practice talking to your friends. And the first time you do it, you're probably going to say things weird and wrong and make it awkward. But I, just from experience, like if a friend tells me that, I mean, granted, I'm in the space, but now I'm going to feel better because when they come to my party, either I'm going to have something for them, or I know that they're going to bring something that person is eating, as opposed to that person coming to my house and not eating anything and me feeling completely terrible as a host that I was unable to do it.
Right.
And so people don't realize that. They're like, I don't want to be the burden on them, when really the person, if they invited you over, they want to appease you. They want to help you. They want to be a part of you. So they make fun of, I also cannot have gluten, and my husband can't have dairy. And so my friends will sometimes be like, oh, the problem couple's coming over. And at this point, it's a joke, right? They didn't say that in the beginning. In the beginning, they're like, they'd send me pictures and like, is this okay? Is this okay? And what's really funny is one of my best friends actually found out, I didn't even realize this. So brioche buns, like that most hamburgers come on, are filled with milk and dairy and butter. And my husband kept getting sick from burgers. And I'm like, maybe you have of course, it's like dietitian overanalyze. I'm like,
Right.
maybe you have a fat intolerance. Like maybe we need to just like look at that. And then my friend was having like a burger. We do themed parties. It was a burger themed party. And she's like, I got JJ, my husband, different buns. And then everyone else was getting a brioche bun. And I was like, okay, cool. And she was like, have you ever looked at what's in a brioche bun? I'm like, literally never. And I looked on the back and I was like, this is why he's getting sick.
Yeah.
So she's now like a part of our health, you know?
Oh,
She's no longer,
awesome.
it's no longer like separating us. It's actually brought us together. And I think that's what people, if you open up the conversation, you can now have that conversation in a much more relaxed and joyful manner than being just like, I can't eat, I can't talk, I can't do anything.
Yeah, I love that. That's awesome. And I did not know that. So thank you.
I mean, I felt so bad. This wasn't like year 1 into our relationship. This was like year 10 into our relationship. And I'm like, oh my God, he's been getting sick off of burgers for how long?
Oh my God.
Know.
Yeah,
You know?
no, I did not know that either.
Yeah. So fun fact, if you are lactose intolerant to the extreme, there's milk and butter and dairy in brioche buns. And then to top it off, a lot of them actually will brush butter on it when they toast it.
Yeah. Wow.
So the poor thing, I was like, I'm so sorry.
Oh man. Wow. Well, I love having conversations with people like you and learning new things. This is exciting stuff. So yeah, it's unfortunate that there has to be so much fear around food choices, especially when someone is suffering from intolerances and allergies and they're feeling singled out and not feeling like they can be part of the regular group. And so for me, I know my mission is to try and make everyone have really enjoyable experiences around food, because food nourishes the body. Food provides us with energy. Food fuels our brain. Food fuels our creativity, our activity levels. And I get really excited about all of those things. And when I hear people and they're like, I had to drag my ass out of bed today and I'm so tired and I needed to pound the pot of coffee. And I'm just like, oh God, that sounds so miserable. Like, I'm so sorry for you. I just want to empower everybody to know the power nutrition has in their overall quality of life. I know for myself, I used to live off of Mountain Dew, Cheetos, and Sprees. Like, that was my life.
Oh my God, I haven't thought of Sprees in forever.
Oh, girl. Yeah. Like, literally, that was life. And I didn't know that I had this compromised kidney function, and that was contributing to why I was already having, such fatigue issues. But then I was putting nothing good in my body to actually fuel nutrients. And, so as I started learning about nutrition and started implementing things and started feeling better, I'm like, whoa, this is really cool. Like, I'm jumping out of bed. I'm literally, I mean, oh my God, the stuff I have done is awesome. Like, I want everyone to feel awesome. You know what I mean?
Into our jobs, right?
Right.
The same way.
Yeah.
I mean, I grew up on chicken nuggets and mac and cheese, and here I am as a dietitian today. So
yeah, no,
if we can do it, anyone can do it.
Absolutely. It's pretty exciting. So I, like you, started off clinically and then did not feel fulfilled. I literally was like, what the hell did I do to myself? Because I cannot do this the rest of my life. And so I left the clinical world and went into the health and wellness space, and found my passion, being able to take people who weren't sick yet and motivate them to want to improve their longevity and their vitality. And then through this journey, I ended up discovering that there's a lot of people who didn't even know that they were suffering with these autoimmune diseases, and really claiming them as my, my population that I want to serve. So tell me, you said you do CrossFit, you left the clinical world, you're doing CrossFit. So how did you get into serving the demographic that you have chosen?
I think your demographic almost chooses you, kind of like you. Like it it didn't really dawn on me. I just basically was like, I was the same way. I'm like, in the hospital, I felt like I was getting to everyone after the fact. I felt like I couldn't do any good for them because most of them were a captive audience who didn't care. Like, yeah, they're sitting in their bed, but they're like, hey, can you bring me a yogurt? I'm like, that's not my job. My job is to educate you so you don't come back here. And, after a while, I was like, this isn't working. So the CrossFit gym, I live in upstate New York and I'm not from here. So that they were really the only people that I had. I didn't have a community elsewhere. I didn't know anybody else. So they had a nutrition seminar when I first moved here and I went to it because I was like, oh, this will be fun. I hated everything they said because it was, based on whatever they had been told, the trainers. And so I went up to them and I said, hey, what do you think about me doing a more in-depth nutrition? I didn't tell them I didn't like their talk, but I was like, this is what I do for a living. I would love to use you guys as an audience and like, we'll see how it works. And then I did a bunch of other seminars for them going forward. And then I changed gyms when a few coaches left and opened their own gym. And I've been doing that ever since, now that I have a captive audience. And I've just been lucky enough I've basically just been in this fitness space since I moved here, which was, I don't know, 9 years ago. Sure, I can't do the math. 8 years ago, I think. That sounds good. I think I've been here 8 years. And so I've been like, CrossFit is the family that welcomed me here. They were the ones who that's where I found most of my community. So they've been my captive audience ever since. And that from there, that's branched off into my business online. And because I was talking to all these people in the fitness space, that's who just kept coming to me. People who are mostly females, but I do have male clients, but they're mostly people who they have a full-time job, kids, plenty of responsibilities, but they still want to be fit. They want to hit, a Spartan race once a year or a marathon or a triathlon or a CrossFit competition. They want to be physically active, not just once a week, but multiple times per week. But they also want to feel good in their body. They want to have that energy to get out of bed in the morning and chase their kids around. And they want to be able to, not fall asleep at their desk at 2 p.m. And so that's kind of, how that branched off into that. And since I love fitness, my friends make fun of me because we were on a plane ride coming home from Austin, Texas. And I make friends with almost everybody that I come in contact with. So this guy had this physical trainer book. And I was like, oh, what are you studying for? My friends were like, here she goes again, making a weird conversation with someone. And I was like, oh, me and my friends, we all love fitness. All of my friends, by the way, when I turned around, were not looking at me and pretended they were busy in their phones and with their own books.
That's awesome.
And he's like, okay. And I was like, yeah, fitness is awesome. It just makes you feel so good. And, my friends are just rolling their eyes, but I'm like, that's truly how I feel. I love what my body can do. And I'm lucky that I was brought up doing sports and that I loved sports because that's what fueled me. And so I've always just had a passion for moving my body, but the fueling my body came when I started in college, recognizing that you actually can feel really good when fueling your body. You don't have to feel like garbage ever. Yeah. And so that's where I put the pieces together, and I'm just constantly teaching people. And what's interesting about my community is that they're educated. And so sometimes I'm like, oh, I don't know what I can teach these people. They're so well educated. But then I remember that just because you eat, you are not an expert in nutrition.
Right. Okay.
And so that's where I finally was like, okay, I can teach these people something every day. And my gym is the first ones to hear all of my stats. Like before I get on Instagram and start ranting about something, they've already heard it for like a day to a week. And they're like, okay, enough, Sass, like enough. Because they don't call me Laura, they all call me Sass or Sassy.
That's awesome. I love that.
And so I feel like they came to me in a sense. I maybe showed up for them day one, but then ever since they've been showing up for me and constantly asking me more questions.
So being that you are so involved in the fitness industry, how do you cut through all the bullshit of the diet industry that is so in everyone's face in the fitness industry? How do you handle that?
It's hard. I tell everyone, if I weren't so passionate about what I do, I would have quit years ago because it's an uphill battle every single day. It's like Groundhog Day. Every day I wake up, I'm like, okay, what news article am I going to read today? What stupid trainer is going to say something stupid today? I shouldn't say stupid trainer. Trainers have a role. I have some really amazing trainers in my life. And you know what they do? They refer out for anything nutrition related, and I love them for it.
Yes.
But I honestly, like, I do my due diligence. I do rant a lot, but every single thing that I post has a lot of thought and research behind it. And I'm also very careful with my words. But sometimes it doesn't matter. I just posted something about keto and you would have thought that I don't know, stole everyone's school lunch money and took their puppy from them.
Right.
But I keep showing up consistently, and I'm persistent with my message. And I'm also an open book. So all of my clients know that, like, if they came to me and said, I want to do keto, I would find the best way for them to do keto that worked for them. If someone came to me and wanted to be a vegan, I'd say, great, we're going to do it the best way it works for you. So I'm not anti-diet. I'm also not anti-certain diets.
Right.
I live somewhere in between, and it's just constantly educating and empowering people over and over and over. And if I weren't that passionate, there's no way I'd survive.
So
what are
the 3 top pet peeve diet industry diets that once you hear someone chatting about them or you read something about it that elicits that feeling in you where you're like rolling your eyes and ready to have a seizure, what would those 3 be?
Oh God, that's hard. The 1200 calorie diet, or anything that's super restricted like that, it boils my blood. And there is a gym in my local area that they do macros for all the people that they work with, and they do a disservice to people by putting them on 1200 calories or less. They follow me and I say all this, and they always like cheer me on. And I'm like, talking to you.
Yeah.
Like I get your clients after the fact, and I'm doing damage control.
So for the person who's listening, who is following the 1200 diet calorie recommendation, why is this not necessarily in their best interest, especially if they are exercising?
That's my biggest thing, is all my clients are exercising 4, 5, 6 times a week. Yeah. So now you're putting all the stress on your body, and you're not fueling your body. So what happens, your body compensates and your BMR goes down. And now all of a sudden your body has to learn how to function on less caloric intake. You feel like complete garbage, by the way. And then when you start actually trying to add calories back, you will gain weight. And so now we have to do a whole unfolding of your metabolism. We have to change any hormones that were ruined in the process, which females especially get docked so terribly if they go below 1200. And 1200 is actually even too low. I find, I don't think I put any of my clients below 16 to 1800. And that's still low.
Yeah.
So, because once again, my population is very active, and I have to always tell people that, like, when I'm talking about caloric intake, I'm talking about the person who is active and is asking more of their body. And when you work out, you need to replenish in order to protect yourself, not just from injury, but from also harming your metabolism and your hormones. And those are like big fancy words, but metabolism is just how your body runs and operates day to day, how it uses the fuel. And your hormones are basically what keep you functioning in order to have, zest for life and zest for a partner and all those different things. And so we want to lose damage. I'm not sure. And so the reason all these trainers do it is because it does promote results in the short term. So their clients, they can now post the before and after, and they can get more clients because of it.
Yeah.
The problem is that it eventually stops working, and it also becomes incredibly hard for these people to maintain that calorie intake while working out. I have had clients say that they couldn't even run anymore. Like, they used to just like going for jogs, and they couldn't because they were so tired and fatigued and had nothing left in the tank. And I'm like, yeah, no kidding. 1200 calories. I eat that by lunchtime.
Right.
I don't know what I would do on that calorie level.
And then another really unfortunate circumstance of that is that once they stop seeing the results, they start eating less and they're exercising more, and they're not getting the results. The body is actually holding on to fat. So now they're super confused. They feel hopeless. And then that typically leads to self-sabotaging, where they go to the opposite end of the spectrum. And it's devastating. So I agree. Calorie restrictions is definitely one of my pet peeves. What's number 2?
There's so many. Let me think of what's been boiling my blood. Okay, well, we can talk about keto.
Okay.
That one is what I just posted about. It's probably one of my, you know, what's funny is that keto and the one I'll probably say next, they have yearly cyclical revisitation. Like there's a lot of diets that they're very cyclical over the long term. So like in 5 years, we'll probably see paleo come back or something along those lines. But with keto, I feel like every year there's just a different name, right? Now we just call it what it is, keto, but it's been Atkins and South Beach diet and whatever else there's been out there. And the issue I have with it is, let me start with a disclaimer. If a certain diet works for you and you see success and you feel amazing, your biomarkers inside look great, and you're able to operate at your maximum, by all means, continue on. However, from experience, I'm talking about my clientele who I've seen use diets like keto. It is not successful in the long term, especially for females, because we have different hormones than males that operate on carbohydrates, especially cyclically throughout the month. It boils my blood. And there are people who have been snapping back at me and say, well, I'm a female, it's working for me. And I say, once again, go back to my disclaimer. If it works for you, by all means, we have genetic outliers. Like I'm not here to say that there's only one way. So I get that there's going to be people that it works for. But keto is actually a therapeutic diet meant for epileptic children that we have now, you know, said, okay, well, it worked for them. Who else could it work for? And they're doing some research studies to look into that. But I think where my real anger came from for keto was I did a cooking class for parents of epileptic children. And if you don't know a parent with a child who has epilepsy, like introduce yourself to one, because the amount of stress those parents have is unreal. I talked to them and I had tears in my eyes. I was like, I have so much respect for you and empathy for you, because they are dealing with children who have hundreds of seizures in a day. And I was like, and so then, you know, learning about them, I just took them through a keto class because I wanted them to learn how to cook for their children, and then also how to adapt the food for themselves and others in the family who did not need to be keto. And I asked a lot of them, I said, how successful is this diet for your children? Not a single person said 100%. I wouldn't even say a single person said more than 50%.
Wow.
And that's what was so shocking, is because in research, we can take out a lot of variables. In life, we can't take out those variables. And one of the biggest complaints was that cookbooks and all these new websites have all these keto recipes, but these keto recipes are actually just low carb recipes. And so now all these children who truly could benefit from keto recipes, they're poor parents who are working a full-time job, working extra to pay for the healthcare that's involved in the treatment of their children, are also trying to feed them keto to help, you know, to get rid of some of the seizure activity, are now not even sure what to cook their kids because this whole fad took off. And I know that there are some like devout keto people who they test their blood, they test their urine, they know they're in ketosis. The majority of people on keto, you're just eating low carb and you're calorie restricting. And maybe that's why for you. But the female athlete or the female fitness enthusiast needs carbs in order to function and in order to keep a natural female hormonal cycle. So went on a little bit of a side part there, but hopefully we got back to where we need to be.
So keto is definitely one of those for me. I wish it would die in terms of being a fad diet that people are, you know, just grasping at, because number one, most people who are doing it, they're not doing it right. And so it's creating more harm long-term than it is being beneficial. For me, what I have seen in practice is that men tend to tolerate it better than women. You will see results initially. Most of those results that you're seeing is just water loss, because your body isn't holding on to the water for the carbs in your muscles. And so that's one of the unfortunate things, is there's this misconception that they're actually burning fat, and they're not. They're just losing water. And then the second that they reintroduce the foods back in that aren't keto friendly, their body holds on to all the water and they're right back where they were. So then they're like devastated and, you know, completely like, oh my God, nothing works for me. Nothing's going to work for me. But there's so much restriction going on. And with women, what I have seen is that they are really stressing their body out because the body is missing the vital nutrients that are needed in order to support their hormones, but most importantly, their adrenals as well as their thyroid function. And once those two systems take a hit, that stresses the immune system and it puts us in a favorable place to start taking genetic factors that are already there and turning them on. And that's where we start seeing autoimmune diseases presenting with, you know, with these kind of extremes. And so a lot of what's happening in the autoimmune world could be prevented if we were just taking a more realistic, whole food, balanced approach instead of trying these extreme measures that don't have lasting benefits. So for me, I'm very passionate about how educating around, you know, keto, it can be done right, but you're really making a commitment, a lifelong commitment to the diet. And again, it's so restrictive that we're really missing a lot of nutrients, a lot of vitamins and minerals that are needed to fuel our bodies and keep all of our chemical reactions happening in a optimal
and pushing
way.
our digestion through.
Oh yeah. I mean,
the lack of fiber is unreal.
Yeah. Well,
it was fun. People were getting so angry at the post and I was like, I think maybe they're just all backed up. Like who isn't mad when they're constipated?
Absolutely.
And maybe that's it. So
absolutely. Oh my God. I love that. Absolutely. So then what would your third pick be?
I'm going to say this only because it's like literally on my screen because I'm going to be posting about it hopefully soon again, but fasting or excuse me, intermittent fasting.
You are my hero.
Like, yes. So this one gets on my nerves because one, I don't know about you, Heather, but do you sleep at night?
I do sleep at night.
And do you eat while you're sleeping?
I don't.
So weird. It's like we both fast at night without even trying.
I know. Isn't that amazing?
It boils my blood. I'm like, okay, there is science and research to support that fasting can improve longevity. However, when you dig into some of the research, a lot of it is done on surprising males, and it's also done on religious holiday. And the thing is that those on religious holiday go back to the way they were eating right afterwards. So it's a very short-term approach to long-term health. And so that's like one component of it. Two is if you think about your day-to-day life, once you start trying to eat, I'm somewhere in between intuitive eating and also like measuring your eating. Like there's some gray area that I'm still navigating with most of my clients. And when you get to that space of understanding hunger cues and also fueling your performance, there will be times when you're not hungry. There will be, you know, especially females, there's times in your cycle and you're in the beginning of your cycle, you might not be that hungry. And the end of your cycle, you might literally eat everything that's not tied down. Yeah. And if you're hungry, just like deal with it. Drink a glass of water. But instead, there are just periods in your life when, okay, maybe I'm not hungry for breakfast. It's not that I'm avoiding it or trying to intermittent fast. It's that truly, you know what, I'm not hungry. I'm going to wait until I am hungry and honor that hunger, but have something available so that I'm not going to eat cookies and cake.
Right.
And so that's where I tell people, I'm like, it's normal for your body to go through cycles of wanting to eat more and wanting to eat less. That's just how your body is meant to function.
Right.
You know, I think about this time of year, I spend a lot more time inside. It's really cold. There's snow on the ground. It's 14 degrees out today. I'm going to get less steps than I normally do. So I'm probably not going to be as hungry this weekend as in the summer when I'm literally out the door in the morning and I'm out as much as I possibly can be between clients, between calls, etc. So I'm going to be more hungry probably in the summer than I am in the winter. And so that type of fasting is completely normal. Or say you're traveling somewhere in the morning and you're always a little bit nervous on the plane. Okay, so wait until you get to your destination to eat. yeah, that might mean that you fasted for 16 hours. Like, are you going to go post on social media that you did that?
Right.
No, you're going to go get yourself a breakfast when you get to your destination because you're hungry. So that is where I find fasting to be just a part of your life. It's not this tag that you can brag about on social media.
Yeah.
So, and then it's funny, you said the thing about keto with males being more successful with it. I find the same thing with if you actually going towards the intermittent fasting diet protocol, men are more successful here.
Yeah.
And it's because, once again, their hormones. And so men tend to be okay. Like if maybe they don't eat till 12 and then they stop eating at 8, that 8-hour window for them, it's good because it restricts them so they're not overeating. And they also aren't doing damage to their hormones because they work out in the evening and they're just not hungry in the morning. And for a lot of males, that works. For a lot of females, it does not work, especially those of childbearing age. And it's just because of your hormones. You might find, once again, the first part of your cycle, you could go until noon without eating, and then you can eat normally for 8 hours and be fine. And then the second half of your cycle, all of a sudden you're like, why can't I do this? I'm a failure. This is stupid. I don't know why this isn't working for me. I'm so hungry. And it's like, well, that's your body telling you something.
Right.
And so for a lot of females, trying to intermittent fast every day just wrecks havoc on your hormones, and then also kind of mentally wrecks with you, because it's like you think there's something wrong with you when really there's not.
Right. Yeah. So yes. So all three, both calorie restriction, keto, and intermittent fasting are also my 3 pet peeves when it comes to diet culture. With intermittent fasting specifically, again, just like what I've seen with keto, it's had such long-term consequences on females because of the amount of stress that it puts their body under. Our body likes to anticipate its needs. And if we're not giving it permission by being as consistent as possible, we're going to send confusing signals to our brain that's going to trigger specific hormone responses, right? So, so intermittent fasting, I have seen men do it more. They have been more successful with it. But long-term, I still see a lot of the same unfortunate hormonal outcomes happen to them just as much as females, psychologically, specifically, what it does to mental health. And so I think that, the unfortunate thing is we do see immediate results with these kind of diets, but the long-term consequences are so great and so severe that it leaves people feeling very confused and not understanding why they're not losing the weight despite whatever approach they're taking. And so for people, I just try to encourage variety, balance, moderation with indulgences, but most importantly, trying to maintain consistency as much as possible. And that's where I feel like most people fail, is that consistency part.
Well, right. It's because we're inundated with something new every day.
Yeah.
And I took all the time, like, I didn't think about speaking to this fitness space, like I showed up to the CrossFit gym the first day, coming from a very competitive background. I couldn't do a single strict pull-up. So do you think I was just like, oh, cool, I'll go do this weird protocol where I'm hanging upside down on a bar and hope that I'm going to get one? Right. No, I said, okay, I'm going to consistently show up and try pull-ups and do ring rows and do other things to get me there. And everyone can wrap their head around that. Everyone's like, yeah, that makes sense. I have to show up weekly, 3 times a week, do a little bit of accessory work, and I know that I'll get pull-ups within, 3, 6, 12 months, depending on my ability. But then you tell nutrition that, and they're like, no, I should be able to see weight loss and my success immediately. Like, there's nothing else in this world that is instant gratification like that. Like, right. That's just not how anything operates. But for nutrition, we've been led to believe that if you do one of these diets, you will have instant results that promise long-term success. But as we know, unfortunately, that's just not the case.
Agreed so much. Well, I absolutely love what you're doing. You have to keep preaching. If you guys are not following Sassy Dietitian, the Sassy Dietitian on Instagram, you have to. She's absolutely hilarious. Your sarcasm keeps me in laughs all the time. I'm always like, yes. I'm like always high-fiving you and you don't know. I'm just like,
thank you.
Yes, preach, sister, preach. So you've got a new cookbook. Is it a new cookbook or is it already out?
It's already out. It came out last November.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
It's called the Complete Eating Cookbook, and it's available on Amazon.
Yep.
And so I will make sure to link where the audience can find you and to get their hands on your cookbook. So we're going to have to wrap this up, but I want you to leave the audience with one tip. What is one tip you can give them to get on track with their health and wellness, especially if they are in that fitness space?
Oh, I think we've said it a lot in this podcast, that we haven't said it outright. It's manage your stress.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think that's the underlying problem for most people, especially in the fitness space, because what happens is we tend to use fitness for stress management. I do it myself. But you think about your stress like a bucket. Mm-hmm. And I like to tell people the Home Depot bucket, because everyone knows that bright orange bucket. And think about if you were to drip a stream of water into there constantly, eventually what happens? It spills over. So the only way to relieve that, because that drip of water is never going to stop, the influx of stress is never going to stop in your life, you have to poke holes in the bucket. And you have to constantly be poking holes in the bucket, because that water sometimes will rush faster and harder. Mm-hmm. So always look to ways to manage your stress. That doesn't mean that you get to go for the cookie jar every day and eat whatever you want. You know, that's aside from diet. It's literally just constantly managing that stream of stress that's coming in, so that you can balance your diet and your fitness to help you reach your goals. And there's many ways to do that, but I tell all of my clients and all of my group programs, I'm like, if you don't do that, I'm not a miracle worker. And no matter what I tell you nutritionally or physically, mm-hmm. things won't change until you manage your stress. So, we all need to do it. I need to do it too.
Yeah. Literally best piece of advice you could have given. And it is such an alignment with my philosophies and practices. If we can't manage our stress, we are never going to manage our diet and our nutrition and our exercise efficiently and effectively long-term. So managing stress is that core foundational place that we have to start if we want to actually live the best quality of life and be able to be sustainable with all of our other behaviors. So thank you so much for that. Thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. I'll make sure to link all of your stuff in the show notes so everyone can find you. I encourage everyone to hop over and start following the Sassy Dietitian. And please go to Amazon and get the Complete Clean Eating Cookbook. It's filled with all kinds of yummy, delicious things. And I know the hard work that goes into making a cookbook. It is Absolutely. Not an easy task.
Thank you for having me on. This was so much fun. I love talking all things nutrition.
Yes. Well, let's do it again, because I think we have a ton of other things that we can talk about. We barely scratched the brim of nutrition and health and wellness and all of the things.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that.
Thank you so much for spending this time with me on the Think Yourself Healthy podcast. I'm so grateful that you stopped by. If you could just take a minute to share this episode with someone you think who would love it, it would be amazing. Take a screenshot that you've listened to the episode and tag at Think Yourself Healthy and myself at Nutrition Vixen so that I can share it. Leave a review on iTunes to let us know how much you loved being here and what you want to hear next. Until next time, don't forget to think yourself healthy. Thanks again, guys. Bye.